Quickly, before we get into today's video, I just wanted to let you know that I now have 2 social media networks that you'll be able to follow me on, if you wish to do so. If you feel like you would benefit from my content, then I do recommend that you follow me on these social media networks. One is Snapchat and one is X. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for the love and support. I hope you stay and watch my content for years to come. Okay, let's get into it. So, I was on a work trip with my colleagues, and we were all staying at a hotel in a new city. It was a beautiful hotel, with marble floors and chandeliers that sparkled in the light. I was excited to be there, but also a little nervous as I was away from my husband for the first time in a while, and wasn't looking forward to staying alone in my room. Well, on the second night of our stay, we decided to go down to the hotel bar for a few drinks after work. It was a lively scene, with people laughing and chatting over cocktails. I was having a good time until I noticed a man staring at me from across the room. He was tall, with dark hair, piercing eyes that seemed to follow my every move. I tried to ignore him and focus on my friends, but eventually he approached me. I tried to explain I was happily married, but he persisted anyway, claiming that he was also married and it could be our little secret. I was repulsed and being slightly drunk at this point. I think I insulted him and demanded that he leave me alone, which seemed to make him angry. The look on his face quickly changed to a menacing scowl, and he slowly backed away from me without breaking eye contact. Luckily, he didn't speak to me for the rest of the night, but I was still left with a feeling of unease from the way that he looked at me. Anyway, fast forward to later that night. I was getting ready for bed when I suddenly heard a knock at the door. I assumed it was room service, so I opened the door without thinking. But instead of a tray of food, I was met with the same man from the bar, standing in front of me with a predatory look in his eyes. He attempted to make small talk, but I could tell he was only interested in one thing, so I again declined his advances and slammed the door in his face. But this was a huge mistake, as in the middle of the night, as I was just starting to fall asleep, I was abruptly jolted awake by the sound of the doorknob rattling. It was as if someone was trying to pick the lock. I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I slowly got out of bed, trying not to make any noise. As I approached the door, the rattling sound grew louder and I could feel the hairs on my back and my neck stand up as I realised the man from the bar might be trying to break into my room. My hands were shaking as I frantically tried to find something to defend myself with, but that's when the lock suddenly clicked and the door began to slowly open. I could see a silhouette of a man on either side and I knew that I had to act fast. I grabbed the lamp from my bedside table and swung it at the intruder with all my strength. The lamp shattered against his head and he stumbled backwards, dazed and disorientated. I quickly shut the door and locked it and immediately called the hotel front desk to inform them of what just happened. The rest of the night was a blur of fear and adrenaline. I didn't sleep a wink, instead spending the entire night staring at the door, listening for any signs of the man returning. The next morning, I followed up with the hotel staff and they assured me that they were still investigating, but to this day, I have absolutely no idea whether or not they found him. As autumn descended upon the quiet suburban neighbourhood, a sense of unease began to creep into my life. It all started with a simple phone call, a heavy breathing voice that sent shivers down my spine. I dismissed it as a prank and thought nothing of it, but the sinister whisper of the Stalker would soon turn my world into a living nightmare. The first sign of trouble came when I noticed someone lurking in the shadows near my home. A tall figure, draped in a long, dark coat, watching my every move. I couldn't make out their face, but the feeling of being watched was suffocating. I reported it to the police, but there was little they could do without more evidence. Days turned into weeks, and my stalker's tactics became increasingly insidious. I'd find eerie messages scrawled on my front door in red paint. "I see you," they would read. My phone would ring at all hours, the same heavy breathing haunting my every conversation. Panic set in, and I began to doubt my own sanity. In an attempt to catch my stalker, I installed security cameras around the house. One night, as I reviewed the footage, I witnessed a figure standing at my window, their face obscured by a grotesque mask. My heart raced, and I called the police once more. They assured me they were doing everything they could, but the stalker remained elusive. The night grew darker, and I couldn't sleep without the constant dread of being watched. I decided to stay with my friend for a while, hoping to escape the relentless torment. However, the stalker was relentless, finding me even at my friend's house. It was as if they knew my every move, my every thought. One evening, as I returned to my empty home, I discovered a chilling tableau. The stalker had broken in, arranging disturbing, life-size dolls in grotesque poses throughout the living room. The masked figure waited for me, sitting in a chair, a gloved hand beckoning me closer. I fled once more, desperate to escape this never-ending nightmare. I started to investigate on my own, convinced that the police were unable to protect me. I delved into old records, searching for clues about anyone who might hold a grudge against me. My search led me to an unsolved case from my past, a person I had inadvertently wronged. It was a long-forgotten mistake that had now come back to haunt me. The stalker's intentions became clearer, their obsession rooted in a twisted sense of revenge. They wanted me to suffer, to feel the same terror that I had caused them. In a desperate attempt to end the nightmare, I reached out to the person I had wronged and begged for forgiveness, hoping it would appease the relentless tormentor. To my surprise, the stalker's hold on my life slowly began to loosen. The heavy breathing call ceased, the lurking figure disappeared, and the grotesque message on my front door ceased. It seemed that by acknowledging my past mistake, I had broken the stalker's twisted cycle of vengeance. The horror had left scars that would never fully heal, but as I watched the last traces of the stalker's presence fade away, I was left with a haunting realization. The true terror was not in the shadowy figure, but in the darkness that resides in all of us, waiting to be unleashed by the right trigger. When I was in high school, I worked at a movie theatre in my hometown. It was a small town with only one theatre, so you pretty much got to see everyone who lived there on the weekends. Every Friday and Saturday night, this man named Kenny would come for the late shows. Kenny had a droopy, lazy eye, was kinda heavy, wore his pants too high, and also had a really bad stutter. He was an engineer for the plant in town that employed half the people there. People were mean to him, and I felt sorry for him. The other employees and customers were just rude and walked away every time they saw him coming. I thought he seemed like a nice guy, just weird. I was nice to him, so he would always come to my concession line and ordered a large cherry coke with a small popcorn. After 3 months of the same routine, he started coming on Saturdays as well. At the time, my boyfriend worked there as well, and noticed that Kenny was paying special attention to me. Soon, Kenny started coming to the movies during the week. The theatre only had 4 screens, so he would re-watch the movies, which I didn't think much of. I could watch the same movie over and over again. One night I made the mistake of letting him in for free since it was his 4th time of coming to see Legally Blonde. Big mistake. After my shift, he was waiting in the parking lot for me to get off work. The movie ended about 30 minutes before I was done. I thought he was just waiting around to say thank you, so I walked by and asked, "Was it as good as the first time?" He flat out said, "Not as good as the fantasy I have about you. Do you want to come back to my place?" I laughed because I thought he was joking and said, "My boyfriend would probably get mad, but thanks for the offer." Kenny goes, "I can take care of him easily." Then he smiles and gets into his car without driving away. I was creeped out but kept thinking that maybe he wasn't good with social interactions. I was 17 and naive. When I drove away, he started following me. So like a dumbass, I drove home and ran into the house and locked the door. Now he knew where I lived. This went on for about a year. I had to change my schedule at the theatre. The manager had to talk with him about being inappropriate. And basically, I just made sure to have someone with me wherever I went. He would sit outside my house. He would follow me to my boyfriend's house. Yes, I had talked to the police and they knew. They just didn't care or think it was serious. The officer who I talked to laughed and said, "Looks like Kenny has a crush. It will run its course." I figured I'd be graduating soon and going out of state for college. On graduation day, he showed up to the ceremony and had flowers sent to my house. On the night of graduation, there was a kegger and bonfire out by the lake. I got way too drunk and had the spins, so I walked away from the party to get some fresh air. Plus, I wanted to throw up in private. I can't say for sure who grabbed me because I was grabbed from behind. The person was big and they shoved me up against and pinned my arm behind me. I screamed, but they punched me in the back of my head and I started to black out. As this person was trying to tear off my shorts, I started throwing up. Total violent projectile vomiting, and I have never been so thankful to puke. He dropped me and ran off. I laid on the ground until one of my friends came to find me to tell me that a boyfriend had been beaten up. Somebody had jumped him from behind when he went to find a place to pee. His friend drove him to the hospital because his head wound wouldn't stop bleeding. The rest of the night was a blur. It was basically me getting into trouble, my boyfriend breaking up with me and everyone thinking I had made up an attack because I was embarrassed about being a sloppy drunk. I worked at the theatre for the rest of the summer until I went to college 1,400 miles away. 2 years after graduation, my family left the state as well, and I have not been back there for 12 years. Now I'm married with a 2-year-old. Today, I'm walking through Target. I see Kenny waiting in the checkout lane. He saw me and smiled. I just abandoned my cart, grabbed my kid and left. I ran to my car and drove to the nearest police station. They told me that there was little that they could do, but we'll keep a record. Fuck my life, not again.